we talk about how bubbles are created in a marketplace, and it's irrational exuberance is the economic terminology that's been embedded into what we call behavioral economics. And there's some fascinating reading material out there around that if you want to have a look at irrational exuberance. So what we're talking about here potentially is we're putting our investor caps on, and we're saying that there are people who have a significant amount of wealth, and we do know that it's easier to create more wealth when you're in a reasonable position to do so, right? So these people might come into the market being advised or making their own decision that they need to buy an asset, and they'll just pay any price for it because they know they've got a really high income. And even if the market's telling them it's a $1 to $1.1 million asset, here they are fighting it out at 1.3 or 1.35, thinking that, well, there's some other person who's in that game with me. It is about getting that balance right. They've done no research. They haven't done their comps well. Even the best buyers agents run out of gas in terms of saying, I can't justify this valuation. And they walk away. I mean, last month I think there was 15 or 20 properties that we missed on. Yeah, and we just said too much. We can't see value there. So what we're talking about here is this imbalance that goes on in the mind around this impatience where they're cashing checks that really aren't worth cashing because they're paying overs for the asset, right? There's a fair market value, there's a market value, and then there's a future value, and they're potentially paying the future value of that asset, and they don't care. Now, when the heat of the buying is over, there's a bit of buyer's remorse got to sneak in there, right? They didn't get to that position to not being successful in what they're doing. So we're just sort of saying, keep the ego in check, keep the competitive nature in check. And as investors, it's okay to miss out to owner occupiers. It's a worry the other way around if there's 5 or 6 investors going hard after the asset and all of the owner occupiers have tapped out. You should automatically get a sense that I'm paying overs for this asset. Now, if you've got a 20, 30-year view on that, obviously that can ease the pain of the mistake. But our view is keep the ego in check. So there's probably a question there that supersedes that for all of our listeners going, well, how do you know that? Well, it is hard, right? But you can get some data on median prices for 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom houses. You can get some data out there for units doing the same thing. Then you do your comps, and what you're paying for a comparative asset is 10% over or 5 to 10% over what the recent values have been. That's got to be a clue for you, right? If it's 1 or 2% and you are moving the price in a moving market, you can live with sub 5% movement. But anything above that, you just got to be aware. And that's where I'm sort of saying, so is that sensible buying, or we better to move on to another market where you can get a comparable asset at a more sensible price?
And price bandwidth too, isn't it? Because that 500 to 800 level right now, that's just moving en masse and setting new floors in the pricing as that's going forward. But like you say, if you're 1.2, 1.5, 1.8, that's when it starts to, you need to make sure your ego's in check at some of those levels, right? That's why professional buyers can help you, i.e. buyers agents, and sound self-serving, but they can actually provide that balance, Ben, all things considered. Okay, this is the point where I think we should stretch, because we talked about in a hot market, you are sometimes creating new benchmarks for price, but as long as everything else stacks up around that as well, understanding what's going on in the area. But if you do what you've just described and you do not have someone who knows what they're doing to give you a bit of a sense check on that, that can be a real challenge. So number 9 is your ego is disconnected from sensible buying, Ben.